Welcome to the February Agriculture and Forestry Action Team. If you would all mute yourselves when you come on, I would appreciate it. And it's a pleasure to have three CCLers who are working on urban forestry projects: Barbara Lucas, Ellen Van Velser, and Benjamin Nagy. So we'll just get started right off the bat with Barbara.
Thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about the Miyawaki forest topic, which I first heard about a year ago in this action team. So it was just, I think, mentioned in the chat, and I looked it up and I was very intrigued and started asking around about it. And there wasn't a very good reception. Either people didn't really know what it was, or they were kind of critical of how it sounded. And so I decided to do a lot of research, and there was so much good information out there in YouTube's and just tons of information that I felt it would help to put together a little movie about it. So that's what I did, and I want to show you the movie, and then I'll go from there to tell you more about it. So here's our website that we put together. Can everyone see that? Okay. And then the movie is on there. Just to let you know, the URL is pocketforest.org with an S. It's plural. And the reason I'm emphasizing that is it turns out after I bought the domain name that there's a Irish company that's pocketforest.singular.org. So we get some of their traffic, and they probably get some of ours. So I'm going to show you this movie.
The impacts of habitat loss and extreme weather are being felt and can be reasons to despair. But there's a lot we can do about it, starting right here in our community. One way is by harnessing the benefits of the Miyawaki tree planting method, inspired by natural forests. Natural forests are made up of a multi-layered diversity of plants adapted to their environment over millennia. The plants grow close, intermingling both above and below ground. Their interactions nourish each other, and they in turn support a diversity of organisms, from fungal and microbial life to multitudes of wildlife. In traditional human-created landscapes, trees are planted singly, away from plant neighbors, surrounded only by turf grass. So they lose out on beneficial interactions, which in Rachel Carson's time were suspected to be important, but in today's science are understood to be crucial. Further problems are created when the tightly interwoven roots of lawn create a dense mat that sheds water instead of letting the rain soak down to the tree roots, as it does in a forest. This not only contributes to flooding, but keeps trees from getting much needed rain during dry spells. Whereas in a forest, the thick humus layer acts as a sponge to keep moisture in, moderating the dry times. When trees are surrounded by grass, another threat is landscaping machinery. A tree's Achilles heel is its cambium, where the lifeblood of the tree travels. Whether cut by mowers or weed whips, damage to the cambium is like cutting arteries and exposes the tree to disease. But in a mini forest, mowers and weed whackers aren't used at all. It's a relatively maintenance-free and protected environment in which trees can thrive. To address climate change and harness trees' ability to sequester carbon, cool urban areas, and slow stormwater, billions if not trillions of trees need to be planted worldwide. Why not plant at least some of them utilizing these strategies so successful in nature? A multi-layered diversity of native species growing close together with thick mulch, not turf grass, in between. This is not a new concept. In the 1950s, a botanist named Akira Miyawaki began experimenting with planting trees in small forests, variously called mini forests, microforests, tiny forests, or pocket forests. He found that as in nature, trees spaced densely grow fast. racing to reach the sun. Faster growth equals faster carbon dioxide uptake. As in natural forests, natural thinning occurs, and those that don't survive nourish the soil. In a human-created landscape, planting big trees equals a big investment, and mortality rates, commonly about 30%, can be a big hit. Whereas trees planted small, in dense, protected, and highly mulched sites have a better chance of making it. And they're less of an investment loss if they don't. In fact, native woody species routinely volunteer, sprouting up on their own, free for the taking. Why not make the most of them instead of mow or weed them out? Popping up around the world are Miyawaki-inspired forests of all types, urban and rural, large and small. They're proliferating in tropical areas such as Kenya, Chile, and India, and in northern climates of Europe, Canada, and the UK. They're found on former industrial sites, as in Canada, and in Japan, on top of old city dumps, as in Cambridge, Massachusetts, along roadways in Japan, on slopes like this schoolyard in Berkeley. In fact, many are springing up in schoolyards around the world.
I would like to see this program extended across Australia in as many schools as possible so that children can experience science in action. Just a forest network with countries around the world. So we've got 2 schools that are joining us in Chile and 3 in the United States. And the children will connect and share their data, share their experiences with the forest, and interact with other children who are taking climate action.
The learning potential is exciting. Pocket forests are found in neighborhood parks, such as these in Ontario and Oregon. Some are on tribal lands, as in Washington State. This one features traditional indigenous edible species. Some are specifically planted for their therapeutic qualities, or to address tree equity, as does this one in Chicago. They're even being planted in people's yards, like this one in Hamilton, Ontario. The City of Hamilton has a project based on their Rain Garden program in which they support homeowners, schools, and businesses in creating and maintaining their own pocket forests. With a climate similar to ours, their how-to guide includes a familiar set of native species. In fact, the whole country of Canada has a campaign to encourage mini forests. Some projects closely follow Miyawaki methods, such as mechanically tilling the soil a meter deep and mixing with organic matter to achieve a light, fluffy soil texture. Others use them as inspiration and adapt. For instance, in Hamilton, Canada, they're experimenting with laying down cardboard, mulching heavily above, waiting a few months, and planting through that. But all must be watered and weeded during their first 2 to 3 years, until they create their own shade. They also must be heavily mulched when first planted. This further keeps the moisture in and the weeds down. And all use native plants adapted to the local site conditions, creating a forest that is self-sustaining after a few years. But beyond that, the concept can take many forms. Some pocket forests are fenced to keep critters out or to signal their managed intentional plantings. Some have signage to raise awareness of benefits and why the pocket forest looks different from traditional tree plantings. Some have paths running through them. Some are food forests with native nut and fruit-bearing plants. And some have flowering species along the perimeter. With pocket forests, the possibilities are endless. The sky is the limit. As the trees reach for the sky, they do us the critical services of drawing down carbon dioxide, cooling our cities, cleaning our air, and slowing floodwaters. Considering their relatively low investments to plant and maintain, pocket forests should be considered wherever a bit of space and access to water are available. They're a great community building project that can create a greener, healthier world for both humans and wildlife.
Let's see.
The
Oops. All right. So that is our movie, and I neglected to mention that we are in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we're just a loose group of people that I managed to recruit. It was about the same time that I saw information about this on our web call, our action team, that I think we were also talking about that research that showed that there's a lack of trees for being grown in nurseries to fulfill the capacity needed to address climate change. So I got the idea. We have a lot of native plant growers in our town. The Wild Ones chapter is very active, and I'm a member, and I have a lot of trees and shrubs I weed out. They're all native, and because my yard is so small. So I got the idea that if we were to put a list online where people could sign up and say, hey, I have an oak tree, or I have a pawpaw, sapling or whatever that is, small, and I can hold it for you until there's an urban forest being planted. So we created this share list, and the Wild Ones members were very enthusiastic about it. And about 6 of us became so interested in creating a pocket forest that we applied to the city and the county. The city is where we're going to do our first one in this year, and then the county park is going to be in 2025. We've got schools asking us to make them. We have so much interest that we can't possibly make forests in all these places where people want them. So we're trying to develop materials like this movie, but also the website where people can go to get more information so they can do their own pocket forest, because we're not going to be, we're all volunteer. We're not going to be working full time on this or anything, but we are trying to spread the word. We put together a forum that's going to be June 18th, which I'll send you all information about once we get the publicity together. But we're very excited because Douglas Tallamy is going to be one of the speakers, one of the panelists. And if you all know who he is, he's kind of the guru of native plants. And he had come out in a New York Times article saying he wasn't too thrilled with this Miyawaki method. And so I reached out to him and sent him the video, and he actually watched it and wrote back, and he said he was so impressed. He doesn't have fears. It dispelled his fears, and he wanted to put the video on his website, no less. And so he is all on board. I think he recognizes the fact that this method has a lot of variations, and but the fact that native plants are pretty much, you have to use native plants. It's going to help the whole native plant movement, and it's going to inspire more people to plant trees than would have perhaps otherwise, because it really involves a lot of kids. Kids really enjoy, having the trees start small and grow fast. And so we've gotten lots of grant money. This is an amazing, I've never had this experience where a project I'm interested in, people are coming up to us asking us to apply for grant money. We have over $5,000 already, and 2 more we're waiting to hear from. And we don't even need, it's not even that expensive of a project. So it's garden clubs. If you're interested in doing this yourself, garden clubs are a great place. They're very interested in this, and they tend to have a lot of grant money. But I should caution that in the beginning, I got a lukewarm reception. So if you, have a similar experience, don't be, disappointed, or, just keep on. I think personally, I think the movie really helped, because I think people just didn't really get it until they saw the movie. So that was a group project. We had a lot of helpful input from a lot of people putting that movie together, and I really appreciated that. So an exciting thing that I wanted to show you is we have a pocket forest principles that we are putting on our website that we're going to be giving away to the community. The city is going to be giving away to the community when they give out their 10,000 trees initiative. I don't know if you all know about that, but it's very climate oriented, because it's all about how we can reduce our carbon emissions. And they're giving out 10,000 trees, and I am trying to share my screen to show you. Okay, hopefully you see this pocket forest principles, and it's for people that might not have the room or the money to put in a full-fledged pocket forest, but it talks about how even if you have just a few trees, a few shrubs, you can group them together, use natives only, ditch the grass in between, make sure you're using a diversity, don't rake the leaves, that kind of stuff. So this is something that we're trying to spread around, even if you're not going to create your own pocket forest. We've been talking about it. We had a radio interview. We've got the Ann Arbor Observer, which is our local magazine, is going to have an article on us in April. There's just really been a whole lot of interest. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. And if anybody has any questions, I might have a few more minutes on my time.
Great. So are there any questions? You can just, yes. I agree, Kristen.
Yeah, I had a question. So I haven't heard of this method before. I'm wondering, when it comes to creating these pocket forests, is it part of the method that it needs to be more of a like strictly protected natural area, or can it be incorporated with like a walking path for the community or something like that?
Yes, in fact, the demonstration garden that we're going to make is going to have a path through it. They're very dense, so you can't like meander through it, because they're so dense. But if you put an intentional path through it, then that will work. Greg, did you have a question?
Yes, and well done. So very impressive. I'm also a member of Wild Ones as well too. So I'm just wondering what the relationship was between your CCL hat on and having your Wild One hat, as I potentially try to bridge that relationship too. I just saw that clip at the very end, and then you had referenced Wild Ones too.
Yeah, well, I credit Wild Ones for really getting this moving, because they have a lot of members in Ann Arbor, and one of the members is Janine Palms, and she has created, she calls it the Children's Wet Meadows in this park that our demonstration forest is going to go in. And so, these people are action oriented. They really love plants, and having a collaboration with them has made all the difference. They've already got relationships with the city parks department, and that really helped. They're kind of like, CCL talks about trusted messengers. They really it really helped to collaborate with them. The garden clubs know of them, and they're well respected in our area. So I would say yes, reach out to Wild Ones members. It's really helped us a lot. Pete?
Oops, unmuted. Great question, Greg. And Pete Marsh. I'm in Southern California, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Electrification Action Team. So this might sound like a silly place, a strange place for me to show up, but we've got some folks in our chapter interested in urban forestry, because Southern California has paved a heck of a lot of our environment here. And to Greg's question about, which group do we credit more and stuff, when in the Electrification Action Team, we're starting an initiative where we're encouraging chapters around the country to reach out and engage in coalitions, either joining them, building them, outreach, whatever. And my perspective is, I don't care which organization gets more credit, but we're seeking to encourage CCLers to do more engagement with other community-based organizations. I think that's something we weren't as good at in the past, when we were focusing exclusively federally and just on carbon fee and dividend. And I think in our new broadened engagement space, that's a a great way. So we're just encouraging folks to connect with community-based organizations wherever. And I think this urban forestry is a great venue for that in many cities. So anyway, for what that's worth.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. Our forum on June 18th, it's going to be co-sponsored by Wild Ones as well. And they're in a, they have a big spread nationally. So we're hoping to get that out, California, across the country.
Wonderful. So lots of good information. And perfect timing. So now it's time for Ellen Van Velser. You're muted.
Here. Okay, great. Thank you. So Ellen Van Velser, I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I serve as the group leader for the Greensboro chapter of CCL and also the North Carolina state coordinator. So I want to tell you about how we as a chapter and I personally got involved with this work in our city. Our city of Greensboro, has a sustainability plan. And that plan was put together and is led by our 10 to 12 person Office of Sustainability, which is part of the city government. So we're fortunate in that regard. We're not starting at the beginning with our city. We also have a Community Sustainability Council, which is a group of volunteers and city planning staff who make recommendations to the city council on sustainability issues. So I think, we had a really good city infrastructure to start with when CCL took on, the whole healthy forest policy focus area. So the tree canopy committee, which I joined, probably 6 or 8 months ago. This committee arose as a subcommittee of this Community Sustainability Council. The council decided that in the context of having a sustainability plan, the council should have a specific focus on our tree canopy. So the mission of this committee was to decide how and make recommendations back to the council about how to meet the sustainability plan's goal of no net tree loss. So right in our sustainability plan, it says under the urban forestry area that we're focused on having no net tree loss. And there was a tree canopy assessment done back in 2009, before we even had the sustainability plan, which showed that we had around 45% tree canopy coverage in our county as a whole. And of course, the city of Greensboro makes up only part of the whole county, some of which is quite rural. So with North Carolina, though, being the third largest growing state in the country, we have felt pretty sure that we were not meeting this goal, given all the development that we can see happening, particularly on the fringes of the urban area, but also even out into the county. And there's a lot of aeronautic industry coming into our airport, which is right on the fringe of the city. So, we've been worried about that. So after an initial phase of development of this committee, group development, all new groups go through storming, forming, norming phases. So after we kind of got through that, we decided to focus first on our land development ordinances, as they are what is written currently in the city code and that developers need to go by. We spent a good deal of time this past fall working on how to tighten those up, how to make them more specific and somewhat more rigorous. As they were written, developers had some leeway that we thought was contrary to the city's sustainability and tree canopy goals. So we wanted to reduce some of that ambiguity, some of that wiggle room that developers currently have. We were assisted in this task because a lot of us are volunteers who don't have a lot of technical training in this area. So it was a fairly complex task. And we were assisted, I think, by the composition of our group, which includes the city's on-staff arborist, a well-known developer who is more sustainably oriented than most, a professor from a local university with expertise in GIS mapping, and a local extension agent. So we really had like half of the committee volunteers had some different kinds of expertise, which I think really helped us in going through the land development ordinances. We worked on that all fall in many kind of long sessions. So I was impressed with how much time people were willing to devote to this. And it's still very high on our list of things to finish. You know, the holidays happened, and then we sort of set aside our meetings for the holidays. That is still a high priority for us to narrow that down, get it in shape to where we can take it to the Sustainability Council first, go over it with them, and then ultimately, when we feel we have consensus on some of the changes, take that to the City Council and actually ask that those ordinances be revised. So that's on our calendar for the spring/summer, I would say, timeframe. Another decision we made was around the need for an updated tree canopy assessment, of course, because 2009 was a long time ago. We started with the professor assigned this project as a small project to one of her classes to give us a bit of a start, and that was informative. They use some of the most recent GIS software. But what we really need is a new flyover assessment, you know, the full assessment, which takes funding, obviously. Last fall, we had recommended several grant opportunities to our sustainability director, and she had applied for a couple of grants from the federal government. Just late this past fall, we were pleased to find out that the city is receiving a very large grant from the U.S. Forestry Service. Right now, the Sustainability Department is in the process of developing a detailed scope of work for the project, and that will be the next important step. Once the Forest Service has accepted that scope, the grant agreement can be executed and the funds will be available. So we expect that to happen in the next month or so. And at that point, the Tree Canopy Committee will re-engage with the city staff on implementation of the grant project, part of which is going to include a flyover assessment, which will be of the whole county, which will be comparable to the 2009 study and give us the updated kind of data we need. You know, with a lot of these things, some of it is kind of obvious where we have trees and where we don't. For example, the western side of our city is much more well-treed than the eastern side. The eastern side is more commercial, it's lower income, and like many cities, the more residential, more well-to-do side of the city has a lot more trees. So we already know that most of our major tree planting projects are going to be on the eastern side of Greensboro. And so one of our additional plans is to do more to engage the community. We recognize that we need to do a lot of education about the importance of trees and how to effectively plant and care for trees. The city land development ordinances, of course, apply to the city itself and to development within the city. What they do not apply to is private land, private homeowners, what we as private homeowners do with our own property. So we really feel the need for some workshops, which we're going to be holding early in 2024 on tree planting and care, because we want to go beyond influencing city policy to engaging a lot of these private landowners in helping to increase the tree canopy across all parts of the city. So while it feels like we've been in a bit of a holding pattern as a committee for the past couple of months, pending the availability of funding, we do have big and exciting goals for the rest of this year and really over the next 5 years of the city's sustainability plan. We're looking forward to the tree assessment in the near future, setting a goal for the enhancement of our canopy. Once we know what the tree canopy coverage is currently, we will set a goal for improving that. And we've been talking about what percentage increase makes sense. We also need to involve the wider county because there's a lot of land outside the scope of the city's authority, and we want to get them more involved. And then finally, just stepping outside of what the city is doing and our involvement in that, our chapter is doing outreach to some of the surrounding communities around Greensboro that don't yet have sustainability plans. So, for example, the city of High Point abuts the city of Greensboro. They also share the county with us. But as a city, you know, they have not yet created a sustainability plan, a clean energy plan, whatever, you know, they want to call it. And so we are meeting with the mayor and the city council and just introducing them to the idea of what the benefits are of having such a plan with some goals and deadlines, one of which would have to do with tree canopy. And, you know, showing them how to access some of the sustainability plans in surrounding cities, because we have at least 10 or 12 cities across North Carolina that have plans in place that other cities and smaller towns can look at. And then finally, our chapter is involved on an annual basis, sometimes twice a year, with a local group called Greensboro Beautiful. And they do, of course, city cleanup projects, but also they do annual or twice annual tree plantings. And so that's something that a lot of community groups get involved in. And I think it's been one way that perhaps we have a little bit stemmed the tide of deforestation due to all the development that our community is experiencing. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Do you have they looked at using drones to do the canopy assessment?
Not specifically. I think once we know that, you know, the funding is in place once we've actually received the funding, I think, you know, how the assessment actually gets done is, you know, to be determined. I think that I'm sure they're going to consider that.
Hi, this is Michael from Michigan. I wanted to know if that sustainability plan in Greensboro could be accessed, just to view it.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've got a page that I can send that has links to I don't remember. It's definitely, I think it's all the sustainability plans that are accessible across the United States. So you
Really?
can look up your state. Yeah, I will find that and post it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question regarding your initiative to reach out to neighboring communities without sustainability plans. Have you found, you know, what, give a sense of like, what's the reason they don't have these plans yet? Is it, you know, they're not prioritizing them? Is it, you know, something they haven't even thought about? It's something they don't care about or value? What kind of response, you know, are you getting? What kind of read?
Well, for the most part, in the smaller towns and smaller cities, we are discovering that people don't know about them. And the way we approach it is we talk to them first, not about climate change, because a lot of these are smaller towns in rural areas. We don't come in as CCL talking about climate, but we talk about how much money can be saved by putting a sustainability or a clean energy, a lot of times you want to call it clean energy plan, in place, because ultimately it saves money. And they can, you know, do a small project first and save enough money to create a staff position as sustainability director. So then they have somebody to keep it going and run it. And we give them access to these sustainability plans of surrounding cities. And they're usually quite impressed, not only with the economic side of it, but they just don't know that this is a thing that other cities are doing necessarily, because their staff is small and they don't have anybody focused on sustainability that might discover these things on their own. So it's been easier than we thought in several ways.
That's cool. Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, you have, you know, give some ideas of small projects, easy wins, allow you to get savings, which you can sort of generate to get the ball rolling for a larger sustainability, you know, focused team.
Yes, and one of our group leaders, the group leader up in Asheville who started this across the state, she did a presentation at our Southeast Regional Conference last year, and then we did a second version of that, open to everybody in our region, and just to get the information out there about how to do it. You know, we have lists of slides that you can use that focus on the economic benefits and so forth. So if other people are interested in that, I can send you the link to that training and those resources.
Yeah, if you want to send those links to me, I could
Okay.
post it on our webpage.
Okay, will do.
Anyone else? If not, then we'll move on to Benjamin Nagy.
Thank you, Nancy. Let me get set up real quick. All right. Can everybody hear me and see the presentation?
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you. So my name is Ben. I'm a volunteer with the Chicago chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And so I'm going to be talking about some of the things we've been doing to promote healthy forests in the city of Chicago. So there's a number of problems that are affecting the city. We've had a decreasing tree canopy over the past 10 years, and it's been especially true in marginalized and underserved areas, particularly on the south side. We suffer from emerald ash disease, like a lot of places. And then there's a lot of tree removals that are, you know, not maybe thought about as much as they needed to, or, brought in the other parties who could provide insight into whether or not this is an appropriate removal. We have invasive species. We have, potentially some issues with the contractors who are hired to manage new saplings, watering, mulching, that sort of thing. And I mean, ultimately, we don't have a view that trees are critical infrastructure, at least that this is not a view that we see embedded in the way trees are handled in the city, and we're hoping to change that. So our chapter has had a few focus areas. We want to increase and maintain tree canopy and prioritizing in marginalized and underserved areas. We want to connect with some other organizations in the Chicago area, of which there are many, fortunately, that align on these values. And we also like to get involved in the policymaking process. So with respect to the levers of political will, the whole CCL thing. So our focus is mainly on chapter volunteer development and grass tops engagement with respect to the healthy forest side of things. So for chapter development, our primary focus has been setting up events, nature events, quote unquote, which are basically just events where people can go out and volunteer in a natural area, doing things like tree plantings, trash pickup, that kind of thing. So we've had a few events the past year, planning more for this year. So Earth Day, for example, we've had stewardship days in certain natural areas, tree plantings and prunings. And so we've worked with the Chicago Park District to set up some of these events. And then another organization, Open Lands, which I will talk more about later, has been organizing plantings and prunings of trees around the city. And we typically get a good turnout at these events, 20 to 30, maybe more. And that's a mix of current volunteers with CCL and new members. And we post these events on meetup.com, and we find that it's been this, among other events, has been a good portal to getting people involved, not just in our chapter, but in volunteering in general. So, and here's some, fun pictures to show about things we've done. Earth Day, we were at the Burna Wildlife Corridor and Nature Sanctuary, and we did trail mulching and litter pickup. And so the important thing here was this is located near an underserved community, and it's good to get these trails remulched, because then people can, use them and they can enjoy these natural areas. And it was, we had a little bit of sleet that day, as you can kind of see in the picture. But as we can see, that didn't deter any of our spirits. It was still a great time. We've also been doing a number of events at a park on the south side called La Villita, or Little Village. It is a park that has been, I don't know how best to describe it, but it was built on top of a site that's been reclaimed from, there was some sort of factory production facility that produced pollution. So the area was polluted, and this is a park that was built on a cap on top of that, essentially. So we're trying to plant some trees here in this underserved community, and it's been great because volunteers get to be involved directly with the planting. How do you measure the hole? How deep does it have to be? Massaging the roots to get the tree in there. The watering and the mulching. So these have been, a great time. And, when it's a sunny day, it's always nice as well. And then lastly, we did a stewardship day on Northerly Island. If you're familiar with the city, it's pretty close to the city core. It's east of Chinatown. And we did this in October. And the goal was to remove protected cages around saplings or shrubs that no longer need them, clearing invasives, and cleaning up trash. And we tied two things together at this event. So this is one of our volunteers, Caroline. In addition to getting people out to participating in these, removing cages, protecting this natural area, we are also getting some signatures and letters to elected officials that represent this area, Northerly Alignment, describing what we've done and asking them to support climate policy. So it's kind of a cool way to combine two different, levers of political will. We have more events in the works, so we're going to try and work with the Forest Preserves of Cook County for another stewardship day at a forest preserve within the city limits. And then also, this gets more to the agriculture side of things. There's some opportunities to work with community farms in the city of Chicago. La Vita Park has one that was initiated in 2022. And so we're hoping to take that opportunity to learn more about urban agriculture, food insecurity, food justice, and what that looks like on the ground. All right, and then also our grass tops engagement has been mostly focused on coalition building and to a lesser extent policy making, mainly because we're, our chapter is new to this space, and the bodies that we're going to be working with, as I'll be discussing, are also relatively new. So there are a couple of primary programs and initiatives that target tree canopy in the region. First is Chicago Region Trees Initiative. And this is more broader and expansive. It goes, they target the Chicago land area, quote unquote, but it extends as far north as Wisconsin, as far southwest as the Midwine Tallgrass Nature Preserve, and as far east as Indiana. So they cover a bit of a wider area. They have more lofty goals. Oops, sorry about that. But their focus is increasing tree canopy, reducing threats to trees, et cetera. And so they were founded by Morton Arboretum, which is a botanical garden and research center near Chicago. And they also worked with Open Lands, which is another organization in the city that promotes healthy forests. And so they also work with the Chicago Department of Public Health, and they published a tree equity tool, which is, it uses GIS data and it determines areas where tree canopy is high or low. And also they're able to do some sort of extrapolation on, temperature maps and water flooding risk type thing. So that's been really cool. Also, Our Roots Chicago, this was started in 2022, I believe. This is specific to the city of Chicago. Goals to plant 75,000 trees by the year 2027, which is, pretty lofty. They want to prioritize marginalized underserved communities, which is great. That aligns with us. And they do some other things like community education. And they have a thing called tree ambassadors. And the purpose of that is to train people to be able to find locations to plant trees and to talk with the residents there, see if they want trees, et cetera, et cetera. And so they provide training, and they also provide some level of funding. So they, groups can start their own like little tree ambassadorships in their communities, which is great. And then lastly, they have a what's called a community tree equity working group, which is a coalition of a number of organizations. And the purpose is to give a little bit of formal feedback to the body that was inducted to inform City Council in a way that can accomplish Our Roots' goals, which is the Chicago Urban Forestry Advisory Board. So they're an official body, and the members were selected from a number of different areas, Bureau of Forestry, there's aldermen, department commissioners and superintendents, and domain experts like associate professors, that kind of thing. And so they provide the basis for recommending forestry policy to the City Council of Chicago. And so they've just recently opened up their meetings to the public, and we've had the good fortune of being able to attend thanks to our friends with Open Lands. So every month or so they have these meetings, and we get to go downtown and watch, maybe provide a little input, but this is more of a listen and learn type experience at this time. So Open Lands, we've been working closely with them on a number of events. And what they are is they're an organization that certifies tree keepers, which are people who are certified to be able to do hands-on management of trees, pruning and planting, that sort of thing. They also offer arborist apprenticeships. They perform public education, not just for the public, but also like teachers and things like that. And then they're also involved in advocacy in relation to trees. And so we've been talking with them. This is more of a recent development, and because we want to get an idea of what their focus is and how can we align with that to sort of push that forward, since they are, local experts on the scene. And I mean, we're volunteers, but we can volunteer to help advance their causes. That's our goal. So one of which is a tree risk assessment policy that they believe the city needs, and we agree. And this relates to why some trees are being removed. So there's a couple different reasons for that. The city is trying to slowly eliminate its lead pipes. And when pipes need to be removed, the Chicago Department of Water, I believe it is, if they need to remove the tree, they just kind of go ahead and remove it. But there are other ways that pipes can be removed that don't require removing a tree. So that's one thing that risk assessment policy we're hoping would address. Also, the alders of the city, they have a certain level of discretion and power in relation to requesting tree removals in their community. But they are not experts in this sort of thing. Ideally, they would take input from experts, but they don't always. And a lot of times they will get requests to remove trees for reasons like, oh, the tree roots are invading my sewer system, or the trees are dangerous, or trees commit are increased risk of crime, things like that. So there's not a whole lot of influence or control over how these decisions are made. And so we're hoping that a risk assessment policy can help align things across the city, all the sources of tree removals, so that trees would only be removed in high risk situations as opposed to willy-nilly. So our next steps as a chapter is to continue to advocate for this tree risk assessment policy in partnership with Open Lands. We'd like to explore community tree equity working group membership if this is something that we can be helpful, in that regard. We're going to be continuing to plan more nature events and explore urban agriculture. And another idea that we had is, what opportunities do we have to utilize the lobbying resources of this organization whose bread and butter is lobbying to advance some of these causes that other organizations are working on that have more domain expertise, that know where the solutions are. They have the experience, they have the connections. So how can we kind of like put our force behind them to advance their causes? Whether that's, maybe we can help train them in lobbying, just some things we're exploring. But exciting stuff. Thank you for listening. I will now take questions.
Ellen.
Yeah, I'm interested in your last comment because one of the things that we're working on that doesn't really have anything to do with tree canopy, but it's related in the sense that we have decided in North Carolina to start working at the state level. And so we're planning a state lobbying day. And one of the asks that we're developing has to do with protecting isolated wetlands across the state. And to develop that ask, we don't have any particular expertise in that topic within our CCL members. And so I have been reaching out to organizations that are involved with that. There's a North Carolina Wetlands Group. There's of course, the Nature Conservancy, and several others. And more than one of them mentioned to me that they were very excited that CCL might incorporate this kind of an ask in Lobby Day, because even though they're on the ground doing actual wetlands restoration, they cannot lobby at the state level. And so, you know, the Nature Conservancy, for example, they have lobbyists at the federal level, but the regular chapters cannot lobby. So they were just thrilled to know that CCL might take up their cause in terms of lobbying. And so we're not training them to lobby, but we are depending on their expertise to make sure we're asking the right things of our state legislature. So I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry, my microphone wasn't working. Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing we're hoping for, that enthusiasm from other organizations. You know, if they just need us to lobby on their behalf, yeah, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that you guys have found success there.
Dana.
Yes, hello. Hi, Ben. I'm also in Ben's chapter. But I just wanted to know a bit more. You mentioned about the Chicago Forest Advisory Board. I believe that was the proper wording of it. I was just wondering if you could share a bit about your experience with that. Like, was there anything interesting that you learned, or what was your experience like sitting in on those meetings?
Sure. I've sat on 2 meetings so far. The first one was more of a quote unquote subcommittee meeting, and only one of the board members was there. The purpose of the meeting was specifically to gather feedback from members of the public. So that was really cool. It was kind of a, brainstorming session on, with feedback on all these different other organizations who were present on what are the things that this advisory board should focus on. What are the recommendations we want to prioritize? So that was really cool. And the most recent meeting was an actual board meeting. And I mean, it's just really cool to be around a lot of heavyweights in politics and in the field, with people who are just experts. It's really impressive. One thing that I learned, which is good news, is that, previously I had mentioned that the tree canopy in Chicago has been declining over the past 10 years. But as of 2022, that's the first year in over a decade that we had net tree gain. And I learned that based on the data that was shared at that meeting. So it's good to hear that things are going in the right direction. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Anyone else? We have time for one more question. If not, then Pete, why don't you share what
I do
you
have a quick question if you
okay.
want. The Nordson Green Earth is a program in Chicago that's specializing in tree equity. Ben, I just wondered if you knew about their Miyawaki forest that they planted at the courthouse. Are you familiar with that?
You know what? I was watching your presentation closely, and I was thinking, like, is this something we could do in Chicago? I haven't heard about this. And then you provided that example, so I wrote that down to look into that, because I had not heard of that before. I don't really know anything about that, but I'm definitely going to look into that.
Well, I've got your email, so I'll send you the information. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank you to our 3 presenters. Lots of information here, lots of impressive things going on, and inspiration to us all. So, top of the hour, and I'd like to say so long and see you next month. Take
Thank
care,
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Nancy.
you.